Chapter 46. Are you okay? Syntholo asked. I hate gate travel, Callie grumbled as she wiped the corner of her lip and reached for a drink. You're the only person I've ever met with this kind of reaction, he said. It's never been this bad before, Callie said with a grimace. Was the fold rougher than usual? What do you mean? Syntholo asked. The space fold, Callie said irritably. It just felt different. It was harsher, most violent. Wait, Syntholo said in confusion. Are you telling me that you can feel time-space folding within the Stargate? Can't everyone? He turned his chair away from the shuttle's control console and studied her for a moment before answering. No, they can't. Are you sure it's not just psychosomatic? Callie looked down at the pool of vomit at her feet, looked back up at him, and said, I definitely feel it. I hope it doesn't feel as bad as that smells, he grumbled as he turned his attention back to the navigation system. I really wish you'd warned me before we left. It usually just makes me a bit nauseous, Callie said. It's never felt this bad before. What does it feel like? Callie considered for a moment. I guess it feels like I'm trapped between the folds. Do you know what I mean? No, not at all, Syntholo chuckled as the shuttle began turning. I wish we had windows or viewports, Callie sighed. It's functional, Syntholo snickered. Would you rather be in our old shuttle, flying without a navigation computer, this close to a gas giant? I'm sure it's very impressive, Callie chuckled as she rapped her knuckles against the wall next to her seat. We're approaching the moon now, Syntholo said. It's changed a bit since I was last here. I'll take the shuttle down as soon as I find a safe place to land. She sat silently, while he reviewed the results of the surface scans. That's a problem, he grumbled under his breath. What's wrong? I'd hoped we could just land near the crater, deal with her body, and leave without attracting any attention, Syntholo said irritably. So much for collecting Mystrium samples. I don't want the locals to think we're scouting prior to another invasion of their planet. But if there's a chance that we could find out more about the attack on the refugee colony. Callie began. This isn't going to turn into another incident like we had with the mutation core, he quipped. Is it? No, Callie grumbled. I found a plateau that should do nicely, Syntholo said. I hope you don't mind helping me make an appropriate grave. I'd prefer not to waste time digging. I'll take care of it, Callie grumbled. I was hoping this trip would help improve your mental state, he said as sequence. My physical state may have affected my mental state, Callie snickered, looked down at the floor. Fair enough, Syntholo smiled. I really hate gate travel. The shuttle tilted to the left as it came to rest on the rocky ground. Callie's tails grabbed onto the container which held the E2 body, steadying it. A faint hissing sound indicated the seal on the external door had been broken. Syntholo walked over and pushed against the thick, plated, door. This is why I hate doors that open outward, he grumbled. Syntholo resealed the door and then walked back to the control console. Love those scanners, Callie grumbled. This is why shuttles should have windows. It's worth the wait, Syntholo grinned as he fired the thrusters and rotated the shuttle. What's worth the wait? You'll see, Syntholo said with a faint smile as they gently landed. He walked over and pushed the door release. It swung open freely this time. Clean up after yourself. I'll tend to Rojo's body, he said. Callie drew moisture out of the air and used it to create a narrow stream of water, rinsing her vomit out of the lander, then she called to the air to dry the floor panel. A steady breeze flowed into the cabin. The air smelled both sweet and earthy as if she had walked into a spice garden. Her tails pushed on the back of the shipping container as Syntholo maneuvered the crate through the hatchway. I could just guide it with telekinesis, Callie offered. No, Sintholo said firmly. I played a role in the events that transpired here. I must do this with my own hands while I meditate on the weight and cost of my choices. He grunted and huffed as he guided the container outside. Do you still want me to make her grave, or would you rather dig it yourself? What I want is secondary to what's reasonable, Sintholo said as he pulled the crate away from the bottom of the ramp. Come on outside and you'll see what I mean. Callie looked over at the doorway and stepped forward hesitantly. A massive storm on the gas giant which the moon was orbiting churned slowly, like a great blue eye amidst the blazing yellow, orange, and crimson gases flowed around the massive sphere. Under the gaze of the unseeing eye, she felt insignificant and unwelcome. An odd sensation passed through her as if carried by the wind. Her mind sought to dismiss it as mere paranoia brought on by the visage of the eye like storm's unwavering stare. She knew there was something more. The foreboding feeling was neither within her head nor formed from the malice of some distant body in space. It flowed through the air and outward from the moon's very core. It's alive, Callie said with a start. Don't be silly, Sintholo chuckled. The E2 built a religion around that gas giant. They believe it's the eye of their god watching over them. You're probably just getting some kind of psychic feedback from the locals. No, Callie insisted. It's not that. The moon, it's alive. How can that be? Not exactly, but you're close. He tilted his head slightly and flashed her a crooked grin. You are certainly full of surprises, Lady Darkseid. Don't toy with me, Callie snarled. Tell me, what is it that I'm sensing? There is something living within this moon, Sintholo said, but merely telling you what it is would dishonor the memory of Rojo. So, you brought me here to listen to some long-winded tale? We came here to put Rojo to rest, Sintholo said with a grin. What's the harm in learning something in the process? I thought you said this was a plateau, Callie said as she wandered toward the edge of the flattened mountain top. What would you call it? Sintholo asked with a crooked grin. He struggled to unbuckle the straps around the crate that held Rojo's body. This isn't a natural geological feature, Callie observed. The slight, well-worn grooves on the ground are proof enough of that. It looks like something shaved the top off of this mountain. Considering the moss on the rocks and scattered trees, it must have happened a long time ago. Too long for it to have been during your lifetime. A loud clank sounded as one of the large seals on the crate opened. Callie's tails, reflexively, darted toward him as if pursuing an invisible threat. You're a bit jumpy, he said as he watched the stinger of her black tail hovering a foot from his face. Sorry, Callie blushed. I don't like this place, and it seems mutual. I don't belong here. This entire moon feels hostile. I just need to unlock one more seal, Sintholo said in an apologetic tone. I'll try to be quick. Thank you, Callie shivered involuntarily as she spoke. Wouldn't that be easier if you shifted into your bestial form? He eyed her with suspicion. What? I don't think that would be a good idea. Callie rolled her eyes. I refuse to have this argument again, he snarled. Callie sighed with exasperation and shook her head slowly. Who'd know? I broke a sacred vow, and that means something to me, he growled as the final latch clicked open. Can't you at least pretend to respect that? You've refused to put on your new armor, preferring to parade around in that scrap of cloth. It's a dress, Callie countered with a vicious grin. I'm sorry you're uncomfortable, but is that really because of what I'm wearing or because of some stupid vow of chastity? He lowered his head and took a deep labored breath. That wasn't fair, Callie scolded herself. I shouldn't have said it. Words have consequences, Sintholo said as he opened the container and gazed upon Rojo's body. Sometimes a misplaced word can do more damage than the vilest of deeds. He carefully reached into the container and gently withdrew Rojo's body. Callie averted her eyes. Her tail slowly traced patterns in the sand around her. He carefully held the woman's body across his arms as he slowly made his way around the flattened mountain top. When I first made contact with the E2, Sin Tholo explained, I was disgusted by many of their traditions. Rojo helped me understand why the rest of the E2 behaved the way they did. She was a member of a tribe that was considered heretics by the others. They didn't follow the same god, and had long been ostracized for denying the divinity of that gas giant. She watched him silently as he walked the girl's body from one moss-covered stone to the next. Her tribe followed a creature they called the Gaian. They believed it was the spirit of their world and the source of all life. They weren't entirely wrong. There tends to be at least a sliver of truth in most mythologies. Callie nodded silently. If an ancient Johnny nursery rhyme could, over time, be misinterpreted as some grand prophecy, how would the misinterpretation of natural events shape a primitive culture? As part of their burial rites, the other tribes would urinate on the dead. That's kind of gross, Callie said reflexively. They believed it kept their people from returning from the dead as mindless beasts. I know it sounds like a silly superstition, but they weren't wrong. He laid Rojo's body against a damp mossy stone. Small green tendrils crept up the back and sides of the woman's head. The heretical tribe had no such practice. They willingly gave their dead over to the Gaian, which would animate the corpses, and lead them away to tend what they called the sacred garden. Callie watched silently as the moss slowly attached itself to the woman's head. Now for that lesson, I promised, Sin Tholo said with a quirky, little, smile. The creature the E2 call the Gaian is a Ko-Jarati which has grown so massive that it's slowly tearing this moon apart. If the E2's dead are allowed to tend to the creature's needs, the massive plant will shred this world. If they let it die, the oxygen levels in the atmosphere will gradually drop until the moon becomes completely uninhabitable. Callie watched silently as the dead girl's body slowly stood and began wandering down the side of the broken mountain. So, Sin Tholo continued, what do you think is the right course of action? If you had the power to save or destroy this world, what would you do? Are you asking if I'd kill the Ko-Jarati? Callie asked. I don't know, Sin Tholo grinned. Would that be saving or destroying the world? It's not so simple, is it? In order to save one thing, you destroy the other. Alternately, the act of destruction can also be salvation after a fashion. It's a bad question, Callie scoffed. Pay attention, Sin Tholo urged as he repeated his question. If you had the power to save or destroy the world, what would you do? It's a fun paradox, Callie mused. Let it all be torn apart or let the people suffocate. All I can do is lead those willing to be saved to a better world. You're right. I can't just sit back and do nothing. He cocked his head to the side and said, I think you've misunderstood my intent. It's not about having the power, but having the right to use it. There's a matter of responsibility and wisdom. I've made my decision, Callie said as if a great pressure had fallen away from her. Thank you, Sin Tholo. What decision? He asked. Even if history makes a monster of me, Callie said with a sinister grin, my path is clear. What path? Sin Tholo asked nervously. The path of fire and blood. Lady Darkseid, I think you missed the point. What's going on down there? Callie said as she pointed over the edge of the plateau. It seems that we've attracted some attention. We should leave. Not yet. I want to meet the natives. Haven't we done enough damage? Sin Tholo grumbled. Chapter 46. Are you okay?